Most people don't know how it happens. Most people don't even question it or think it's too technical to even question or understand. So yeah, that's the context for how this session has been. But yeah, like I said, if you are completely new, you don't need to have any context. As we'll read along and interact, you can ask questions and share your own stories and yeah, any questions or comments you have. I'll start. I'll actually start from here. The perceived problems stemming from different outcomes arising from different life choices and circumstances are everywhere, and the political measures proposed to correct these issues are increasingly preposterous. From a first principles perspective, there is only one human right, and that's the right to be left alone. It's the only right that can always be true for every person, regardless of where or when they are born. Every other so called right necessarily violates this most basic right for someone else. If housing is a human right, this has to apply to people who can't afford a house. In turn, someone else's right to be left alone must be violated because someone has to pay for the damn thing. So there's like one short video that I think I can share later on the group is explaining the difference between rights and needs. So people have needs. Housing can also be classified as a need, but right to housing is not a right because it says that somebody else has to build the house for me, because that's like entitlement that you have on other people's labor, and that can't be a right because that necessarily violates the property of someone else, the rights of someone else to their own work. So this is the contention of why this book has also said this more than once, that the only human right is the right to be left alone, which is the economic principle of free market, and it is the political or intellectual idea of libertarianism, which is that um, humans interact voluntarily. So nobody can force you to act in a certain way. And by that nature, in a very layman language, it's the right to be left alone. Here, it is crucial to distinguish between the terms lawful and legal. This distinction is vital in the context of legal philosophy and the understanding of the law's role and legitimacy in society. Let's explore. A lawful act refers to an action or conduct following natural law or the first principles of justice and morality. It implies a universal standard of behavior that respects the rights and dignities of all individuals. In contrast, the term legal pertains to actions or conduct that comply with laws made by legislative body or government. I'll actually give a context here if I can share it with you. Let me see if I have a tab open. So there's a group that's, and I'm not shilling this group because I'm getting paid for it, just to be very clear. And there's like one meme that really helped me understand this idea, uh, which is this, that some people think that anarchism or even in Bitcoin, people are advocating for no laws, which is not true because the idea of individualism does not mean that there is no law. I hope this is visible. Can someone quickly confirm in case?
Yes, it is visible now.
Yeah, it's a very simple graphic explanation of the difference between individualism and collectivism. It's that it does not advocate that individuals have freedom to do anything. It means that laws are defending individual rights. And yeah, the idea of collectivism, which I don't have an expertise on, but it's the dominant idea of the modern day. You can't see the okay, okay, yeah. So yeah, I was just saying that collectivism is the modern day political system in every country. It's the legal system of every country where people are forced to act in a certain way, which is antithetical to the idea of free market, to the idea of voluntary cooperation, and ideas which make human life valuable. Yeah. So I'll read from here. A lawful act refers to an action or conduct following natural law or the first principles of justice and morality. It implies a universal standard of behavior that respects the rights and dignity of all individuals. In contrast, the term legal pertains to actions or conduct that comply with laws made by a legislative body or government. Yeah, so this is like the core tenet or the fundamental building block of law, that anything that we study is from the understanding of first principles. That's not even a legal thing. That's a human study thing, that whenever we study a subject, we study or reason from first principles. So The core tenet of any legal philosophy that at least one school advocates for is the understanding of natural law and first principles of justice and morality. So natural law is like understanding human action and what the consequences of those actions are and which restrictions do we need to apply. Law always means that there's a set of rules, and rules always mean that there are restrictions placed on certain behavior. So, like with any Bitcoin specific consensus rules, there's a restriction placed on which transactions are valid. Very, very similarly or analogously, there are restrictions placed on human action. There are certain behaviors which can't be allowed or which have a certain consequence, and that comes under the ambit of law. And yeah, natural law is a very simple school of thought. It's not something that um, uh, people are taught at universities. Maybe in jurisprudence there is an explanation of that, but law is not that discussed in detail, to the best of my understanding so far. It implies a universal standard of behavior that respects the rights and dignity of all individuals. In contrast, the term legal pertains to actions or conduct that comply with laws made by legislative body or government. Yeah, in this paragraph, distinction being made between lawful and legal. So legal is like very contemporary. It's specific to the specific laws made by the government of that jurisdiction of that political border and by any legislative body which enforces it. These are positive laws, meaning they are formally enacted and codified by authorities. The notion of legal implies something adheres to the rules set forth by a particular legal system at a specific time and place, nothing more, nothing less. Legal standards can change as governing bodies make, amend, or repeal laws. Having said something legal is not necessarily lawful. Yeah, there is a distinction between positive laws and negative laws. I haven't gone too deep into it, but somebody was explaining it to me recently. So this paragraph explains positive laws, which say that there are formal enactment by authorities. So these are restrictions of behavior which are made by authorities, and this is something that can change over time because somebody in authority is telling you that this is a law, this is something that you need to comply with, as opposed to natural law, which is universal standard of behavior. It's not something based in some point in history or time. Universal by definition means that it applies across time, across borders, um, across values as well, because it by definition means that this should apply to everybody. Circumstances where an act is legal but not lawful are everywhere. The very notions of taxation and inflation are legal but not lawful since they violate man's inherent right to be left alone. Conversely, actions that might be considered lawful, just and moral, but not legal, prohibited by statutory law, are even more abundant in clown world. Yep. So yeah, it's there is a nuance between legal laws, and taxation and inflation come under that because it's mandated by some authority. It's not through uh, natural law of voluntary cooperation. Conversely, actions that might be considered lawful but not legal are even more abundant in the world. I'll take a quick pause here. I'll try to sum up this last statement in the meanwhile. If somebody has questions or thoughts, please feel free to share. Yep. So, yeah, I think the next paragraph is the perfect example to cover it. So, something which is considered just and moral, but it's not mandated by law, um, are more abundant in clown world, and we'll see through this next paragraph. Victimless crimes are punished every day in the Western world. In 2022, 400 people in Russia were arrested for things they said on social media. In the UK, the equivalent number was around 3,300. The further away a society's legal system strays from fundamental property rights, the less lawful it becomes. One key point that was made in this book was that to have any freedom of speech laws, to have that right to freedom of speech, the fundamental need is to have fundamental property rights. So it's like a prerequisite to even consider having freedom of speech, because until you can own something, until you can stand on a platform and say that this is mine and nobody can take it away from me, any freedom of speech does not really matter because somebody can take it away from you by force. So preserving property rights is the fundamental law that allows human cooperation. Frank von Doom, a Belgian philosopher and classical liberal natural law theorist, examined the distinction between lawful and legal in his 1983 writing, Het Fundamental Rechtsgebild. This is German, so I might be mispronouncing it. The fundamental principle of law. Van Doom argued that a rationally convincing answer to what is law can only be found by respecting dialogue and argumentation. Thus, he is an adherent of argumentation, further explored in the works of Hans Hermann Hoppe. Argumentation ethics establishes a consensualist ethic of non-aggression, the principle that aggression against the property or person of others is always unjust, as a presupposition of argumentation itself, and therefore as a norm that anyone engaging in a discourse must accept. I'll first break this down in my very simple and layman understanding. I was recently giving this argument to a friend who is not into Bitcoin at all, who is very vocal about why Bitcoin is a problem. And the very simple argument that I wanted to give to him is that Bitcoin at worst is an experiment. So it's like humans are doing something on their laptops, and it's a protocol that they're defining, and it's a certain content of behavior which says that leave me alone with my laptop at a very simple layman term. It's like I'm doing something on my laptop at it's like a very simplified version for sure, but it's what makes Bitcoin work. So how can somebody make the claim that you are doing something that might harm another human being? So this is his argument for why Bitcoin is dangerous, because there is no control for some reason. A lot of people think that there is a problem with the idea of money which nobody controls. So yeah, before I again explain this specific paragraph, which I really like, the idea of argumentation ethics. I'm not an expert on it, but I think everybody understands this, that the way to arrive at good ideas, to refine them, to propagate them across number of people, the way to do that is argumentation. That nobody's born an expert into anything. Every human has to first make efforts and then learn by feedback. So, any idea of any system, whether it be monetary, legal, philosophical, political, or whether you're deciding the rules of your house, it's like things like those need to happen through people voicing their concerns, their demands, their needs, and by people, other people. If they are happily wanting to do that, that's like there's no point of conflict. But if there is conflict, then you can resolve it by argumentation. You can resolve certain set of boundaries and certain restrictions on behavior by doing that, by engaging in argumentation and arriving at peaceful resolution. So it's like one of the most beautiful skills that humans possess, that we can do that. We can get into arguments, we can come to an agreement, and if we don't, we can agree to disagree. This is where we can draw a boundary and live happily. So yeah, just reiterating on the fact that this is also why property rights are probably the most important human right in the world, or maybe the only right, as this book has been saying that it's the right to be left alone. Quickly read this again. Frank von Doom, a Belgian philosopher and classical liberal natural law theorist, examined the distinction between lawful and legal in his 1983 writing, The Fundamental Principle of Law. Van Doom argued that a rationally convincing answer to what is law can only be found by dialogue and argumentation. Thus, he is an adherent of argumentation ethics, further explored in the works of Hans Hermann Hoppe. Argumentation ethics established the consensualist ethic of non-aggression, the principle that aggression against the person or property of others is always unjust, as a presupposition of argument itself, and therefore as a norm anyone engaging in discourse must accept. Yeah, yeah, I think Prince is like when somebody wants to summarize Bitcoin value in sentence, I say that it's the non-aggression principle, which means that the aggression against the person or property of that person is always unjust. And it's a presupposition. It's like that's the fundamental building block of civilization. That's the fundamental building block for cooperation. And anybody who is engaging in discourse has to accept that uh, as the rule of law or rule of cooperation. Imagine you're in a classroom where everyone tries to decide what game to play during break time. The students begin to suggest games, finding out which would be most fun. By talking and listening to each other, the students have all agreed to a few crucial rules without even uttering them. Together, they are using words to figure things out, not pushing or hitting each other to get their way. It is as if there's an invisible rule that says we solve things by talking, not fighting. Simply put, they all agree to the non-aggression principle. By discussing, they also agree that everyone should be able to speak up and have their ideas heard. It's like saying everyone here is important and everyone's ideas matter. Imagine someone in the middle of a discussion saying, Actually, I think it's okay to take what I want from others, even if it means hurting them. By joining in the talk, they have already demonstrated that they believe talking is the right way to solve problems. I'll read this again. Imagine someone in the middle of the discussion saying, actually, I think it's okay to take what I want from others, even if it means hurting them. By joining in the talk, they have already demonstrated that they believe talking is the right way to solve problems. Yeah. So this is like, I think this is the important paragraph that I'll just quickly expand on. Somebody expressing this opinion that they think it's okay to take from others, even if it means hurting them, which means violence or which means doing something which the other person does not consent to. By making this statement, they've at least made it clear that that's what they think. And that's like the first step that they have chosen to do. And this next sentence is that they have demonstrated that they believe talking is the right way to solve problems. I'll continue reading. A statement like, I'll just take what I want, can never really be an argument. Arguing against the act of,
And just so
yes.
other than the speaker, is it possible for anyone to mute themselves? So Keshav and Pragya, there's some disturbance from your end, I believe, Keshav. Is it possible for both of you to mute yourselves, please?
Yep, yep.
Sorry, guys, I didn't realize I was driving. I'm so sorry.
No, no worries at all. Yeah.
Yes. Thanks, Faisal. Yep. Yep. So just reiterating on the fact that imagine someone in the middle of discussion saying that he thinks it's okay to take what I want, even if it means hurting them. They have expressed that they have a certain value set. And the next paragraph, a statement like, I'll just take what I want, can never really be an argument. Arguing against the act of argumentation is by definition irrational. Yeah, I actually want to just expand on this statement. Arguing against the act of argumentation is by definition irrational. So, if somebody here has was part of the how to think about the economy sessions, or has read Austin Economics or very basics of it, or even if you've just heard of it, is the fundamental building block of human action is purposeful behavior, and that's the core tenet or the axiom that we take for granted or we take as assumption, and then we study economics. So the reason that we do that we say that human action is purposeful behavior, because somebody trying to argue against it, or somebody wanting to defeat that axiom or say that that axiom is wrong, is also acting purposefully to defeat that axiom. So the assumption is that when they're acting to say that, hey, this is wrong, they are making an action. So their purpose is to do something. It's purposeful behavior again. So similarly, when somebody is arguing against the act of argumentation itself, it becomes irrational because they are making an argument. And as we discussed before, that the fundamental tenet of argumentation ethics is that we resolve things by talking, we resolve things by arguing, which does not necessarily need to be a negative word, because it just means that you are voicing your concerns, needs, or demands. In simple terms, argumentation ethics tells us that we solve disagreements verbally. By solving disagreements verbally, we all agree that being peaceful and letting everyone have their say is the best way to go. Anyone engaging in argumentation and not respecting the outcome of the discussion is effectively just a bully mocking his next victim. Yep, I think this is a powerful statement. Anyone engaging in argumentation and not respecting the outcome of the discussion is effectively just a bully mocking his next victim. Yeah, so it's like the antithesis of cooperation. So somebody, when they're engaging in argumentation, are implicitly saying that we resolve things by discussion, and when it comes to a conclusion, it comes to a concrete step. And if they disagree and they do not respect that outcome, then they are a violent entity, or in a layman word, they are a bully. Modern societies have strayed far from rigid consensualist ethics. Any freedom-loving person who wants to exercise their birthright to be left alone has little choice but to take matters into their own hands. The long and winding road to freedom never leads through the dense forest of obedience. Getting into trouble with the law can be unwise, wait, as this can severely affect your future freedoms. So how can one find a way of life that is ethical rather than criminal, while simultaneously avoiding falling victim to stupid, victimless crime laws? First skill needed is how to choose your battles wisely. You have to figure out which hills that are worth dying on. Yeah, so this is the core idea or the title of this passage. Let's read this quickly again from here. Getting into trouble with the law can be unwise, as this can severely affect your future freedoms. So, how can one find a way of life that is ethical rather than criminal, while simultaneously avoiding falling victim to stupid, victimless crime laws? The first skill needed is how to choose your battles wisely. You have to figure out which hills that are worth dying on. Another way to put it is that human life is a battle of is a thing of fight. So we are by without choice fighting some part of nature, which is that we have to comply with the rules of nature. So we are already when human life is existing, it is putting up a fight against entropy because entropy is more disorder and human action is to create more order. So it's a fight that we are put under as a virtue of being alive. So any other battle or fight we pick should have a purpose that helps us make our life better or help us have to put up less fight with other things or in later. So I think yeah, that's like a very simple idea, but I think it's something that is an important idea that we pick battles only when there's something to be gained from gained from it. Many battles, verbal and physical, are fought over fruitless causes. Make sure the hill you're prepared to die on has a valley worth living in beneath it. Find something worth fighting for is what makes living worth dying for. So, how can you find your hill to stand your ground on? Most people never figure out the answer to this question. Yeah. The next few paragraphs are actually quite, I mean, it's something that I would encourage if somebody has time to read on their own or even just mull on their own. You don't necessarily have to read these specific passages. But yeah, it's a individual process. I think everybody in Bitcoin has had to go through an individual process of learning because that's the nature of this technology or this idea because it's a paradigm shift. So the next few passages talk about that process itself. Many battles, verbal and physical, are fought over fruitless causes. Make sure the hill you're prepared to die on has a valley worth living in beneath it. It simply means that when you're getting into an argument, you are doing it to get somewhere, and make sure that that's worth that argument, worth that fight. Finding something worth fighting for is what makes living worth dying for. So, how can you find your hill to stand your ground on? Most people never figure out the answer to this question. The task at hand is nothing less than finding the meaning of life, the meaning of your life to be more precise. Moreover, there are no objective ways of knowing who succeeds at this fundamental task. One thing is for sure though, noise blurs your signal. Advertisers, politicians, journalists, teachers, most of these people distract you from finding your path. Aging is an extraordinary process whereby you become the person you always should have been. David Bowie once said. But this is only valid for people who are true to themselves. Yeah, like I said, yeah, this specific paragraph I think is very amazing. It's very well written and it's very powerful. It's very simple, but it's very powerful because yeah, I think human action is always purposeful because human existence is trying to find meaning. We are trying to find patterns of behavior. We're trying to find things which make us joyful, which make us want to share things with other people. That's like very intuitively human thing to do. And yeah, so there are no objective ways of knowing who succeeds at this fundamental task. There is no measurement of success, of happiness, because it's up to the individual to say that they are happy with what they are, and so on and so forth. But yeah, what we do know is that there are distractions, and yeah, I mean, everybody knows this in the modern day that advertisers, politicians, journalists, teachers, there's all kinds of schools of thought which are intended to distract you, intended to misinform you, and yeah, this part of this last paragraph I think is amazing because yeah, it's one of those things that I am not somebody who's lived a lot of life or has a terrible amount of experience, but I think at some level everybody starts to experience this, that some things just become simpler to understand or become very obvious just by the virtue of aging. Which is an amazing phenomena because over time you just learn what things work for you, what you like, which people are worth your time, and so on and so forth. Being true to oneself seems straightforward enough, but the process can be made easier and quicker given the right tools. All tools have the same underlying purpose to save time. You will need a remarkably efficient noise removal tool to even have a shot at finding the meaning of your life and becoming the person you were always meant to be. That tool is Bitcoin. Just one anecdote, and I'll take a pause right now. We're about 40 minutes into the session. We started at 2010. So yeah, we're like 20 minutes into the session of reading. Yeah, I'll just share one example that as profound and as philosophical all of these ideas are, the simple thing is that, like I alluded to earlier, that inflation steals your purchasing power, which effectively steals your time. And everybody knows the value of time. Everybody knows the value of spending time with family, with friends, doing things you love, doing things which make you happy, which make your life purposeful, is what we aspire to do. It's like something we wake up to want to do. So inflation is inherently stealing it, and Bitcoin is by its nature non-inflationary or meant to solve the problem of inflation. And yeah, doing that more and more in 2024, it's becoming so obvious that the debate is no longer even scarcity or no longer about the rules of Bitcoin, which is a disappointment because that is what makes this thing happen. But it's yeah, the thing itself, the word Bitcoin is at least getting more people into it. You'll take a pause here. Just a 30-second pause. Oh, I see Mango has.
Just a
Yes, yes, Keshav, go ahead.
I was saying that just a comment I would like to make. A couple of paragraphs back, you mentioned that something which is legal but not lawful. I think quantitative easing slash money printing is the best example for that, right?
Yeah, yeah, I shared this meme
I
with
mean,
my best friend. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I'm just saying that all the governments do it. If they do it, it's not a problem. But if we do it, apparently we are counterfeiting, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think yeah, the way I have started to understand education for my friends at least is that I don't want to say anything about Bitcoin. But yeah, this meme I shared this with one of my best friends that this is a very simple meme, right? That does not mention Bitcoin. It has Bitcoin in the corner. It just says you have to work the rest of your life for paper money that we create out of thin air and make you borrow from us and then charge you interest and taxes on. And then the power that this person has to even make this claim is just from people who think that this person is power. Bitcoiners just walk out of it. And yeah,
Yeah,
one.
isn't the simple. Sorry. I thought you. Please
Yeah, no,
go.
I'll just make one point that I think paper money and creating it out of thin air should be the only thing that even should be the idea that we come across or spread across in terms of economics. But what's even more troubling is the idea of fractional reserve. What it makes you do is that it incentivizes or it creates this illusion that borrowing is good for you because it's easier, because cheap credit, and what that effectively does is create more money into supply, and then you pay the interest on that which did not cost the person creating that money on. And there's like the idea of taxes, which is like the third layer. It's like they print money out of thin air, then they print money out of thin air again by doing fractional reserve, then they also tax you on it. Yeah, I'll share the book again. Yeah, in case you were saying something, Keshav, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying that I sent a similar meme in the Before I Bangalore group where a couple of politicians say to the people that we'll give you 3,000 per month, we'll give you 2,000 per month, like various schemes, right? And then the people ask like, who's paying for this? And then they say that only you are paying for it. So just like something along the similar lines.
Yep. I think Keshav shared on the chat Bitcoin crossed 90K. Yeah, yeah. I think Bala also mentioned that by the time next year bit devs arise, we'll have more people than we can accommodate for. So whether it's for bad or for worse, but yeah, numbers bring people. Uh, yeah, I'll start reading now. Bitcoin is the most incredible noise remover ever discovered.
You're
Why? Because
driving.
oh, sorry.
And I'm addressing Keshav. You shouldn't look at the price chart while you're driving, especially not these days.
Yeah. Yep. Bitcoin is the most incredible noise remover ever discovered. Why? Because Bitcoin is entirely truthful. The reason for this is simple yet elegant. In Bitcoin, the map defines the territory, not vice versa. Whatever happened in the time chain is unequivocally true from the perspective of the network. Once a valid block is found, it is there forever, and everything in that block is by definition truthful. Finding your passion, your hill to die on, is one of the most rewarding things you can do with your life. Now, can monetary riches be your passion? Is becoming rich a fulfilling goal to strive for? Philosophers have debated this point for ages. The thing is, no one wants money for the sake of the money itself. We want what we think that money will buy us. Whether the thing is material goods, fame, fancy friends, political influence, or a supermodel wife, money is never the end goal. It is merely a means to whatever that goal may be. If you honestly examine your soul's deepest desires, you most likely crave love, belonging, security, and little else. Yeah, I think, yeah, this is the most difficult argument. Just giving a counter opinion to this, that it's a more difficult argument to make to people who just want to get interested in Bitcoin for the number, because advocating for a sound money system becomes very difficult when somebody just asks you that this will this double my money. For example, it's I don't even know where to begin answering that question. But yeah, so this for somebody who is inclined to share ideas, discuss things, understand things more than just numbers. This paragraph is beautifully written. I'll quickly just read this again, because why not? Finding a passion you're here to die on is one of the most rewarding things you can do with your life. Now, can monetary riches be your passion? Is becoming rich a fulfilling goal to strive for? Philosophers have debated this point for ages. The thing is, no one wants money for the sake of the money itself. We want what we think the money will buy us. Whether that something is material goods, fame, fancy friends, political influence, or a supermodel wife, money is never the end goal. It's merely a means to whatever that goal may be. If you honestly examine your soul's deepest desire, you most likely crave love, belonging, and security, and little else. Rather than bringing you closer to your soul's deepest desires, some possessions hinder you from reaching them. They end up owning you, not the other way around. The notion that your possessions end up owning you has a flip side. If you can rid yourself of the urge to own something, you own that urge. Ridding yourself of as many material cravings as possible is the best freedom increasing life hack ever. The power of becoming a stoic minimalist who no longer cares about stuff is perpetually underrated. This is, regardless, I believe, a human exercise of understanding desires, that a lot of the desires are useless, to say the least, to say it very simply. So it's a human exercise to understand your desires and to let go of desires. And by let go, I mean not letting them control your life, of becoming detached to some of the useless desires. Of course, people around you, like your family and friends, may not have come as far in their philosophical journey as you have. In all likelihood, they are just as materialistic as the next guy. When you have a family to provide for and an employer to please, the game of materialism forces itself into your life to a certain extent. However, ridding yourself of material cravings is still beneficial because it gives you truth goggles through which you can view the world. You'll more like clearly see how much everyone around you is a salesman. Yeah, so it's important to just also say that materialism itself cannot be wrong, because everybody has those needs, and currently in the world, because providing for family, pleasing your employer, things like those forces itself into our lives. So it's materialism at work, and it's not wrong itself because it's the virtue of life. Yeah, and however, ridding yourself of as many as you can definitely helps your life become simpler to navigate. Bitcoin is an excellent noise remover in this sense because of its non-inflationary nature. When you know that the purchasing power of your money is likely to increase over time, you are less likely to spend it on frivolous things. As Tyler Durden explained in Fight Club, advertising has just chasing cars and clothes, working jobs we hate so we can buy shit we don't need. We are the middle children of history. Man, we no purpose or place. We have no great war, no great depression. Our great war is a spiritual war. Our great depressions are lives. We've all been raised on television to believe that one day we'll all be millionaires, movie gods, and rock stars, but we won't. We are slowly learning that fact, and we are very, very pissed off. Yeah, I think Fight Club is definitely very Bitcoin energy movie. The approach in that movie was not the Bitcoin approach, which is the sly roundabout way of creating a system that they can't stop, but the idea of questioning the system, which makes people hate their work, is definitely the theme of the movie. And yeah, Bitcoin teaches us that work itself isn't ever a problem, because it's what makes human life purposeful. It's what makes human life um, exciting as well. I think just getting up to the idea of doing something that you like, doing something that someone uh, pays you money for, and doing something that someone else values as well. And this was one of the ideas in Austrian economics, that what money allows us as a tool or as a technology is that sometimes, even if we do not like the thing that we are good at, but we are able to create value for someone else and exchange it for something that allows us more optionality, just makes a better world. And I think Hayek also puts it that money is the greatest freedom discovery tool, because it allows you to cooperate with people in a much scalable manner, even if you don't know them, even if you, yeah, things like those. when practically everyone on earth uses a monetary system based on a deceitful lie, everything else becomes a lie too. Inflation is theft disguised as altruism, and it distorts all price signals, making all of us uh, work jobs we hate so we can buy shit we don't need. I think just a very nuanced or technical topic on economics or finance is that yeah, everyone in Bitcoin has started to understand that there's a lie of money printing that's preventing a lot of people to understand life or see through a lot of noise. But also the point of inflation is theft disguised as altruism is that inflation, if you study traditional economics or follow the mainstream finance news, you will see that it is said that central banks have a mandate of providing full employment. Uh, and how do you do that? By inflation, by creating more money that nobody should be unemployed. So it's disguised as altruism. That's why most people fall for it. That's why most people don't question it, because it's not easy to do that. It takes some work and some research to understand that. Inflation is the great tragedy of our generation and has been the tragedy of many other civilizations too, which is like a cycle that humanity has been going through, whether it be Roman Empire, uh, the Dutch Empire, uh, the British pound, and now the US dollar. In the Roman Empire, a small silver coin, the denarius, once held immense power. First minted around 211 BC, the purity and consistent value of the denarius fueled Rome's economic engine for centuries. As time passed, the pressures of prolonged military campaigns and political instability began to drain Rome's treasury. Several Roman emperors, debased the currency to fund their ambitious infrastructure projects and their wars. They gradually reduced the silver content of the denarius, supplementing it with cheap metals like bronze or copper. Strategic debasement initially remedied Rome's financial shortcomings, but ultimately brought the mighty empire to its knees. Yeah, I think I've not read that book so far, but there's a popular Bitcoin uh, uh, community book that a lot of people talk about is the Cathedral versus the Bazaar. So a lot of people lag behind understanding new ideas, technological ideas, Bitcoin, because they look at the cathedral, which is like a fancy or huge structure. So most people think that, hey, this is too huge and this is going to be relevant forever. And bazaar is like more messy, right? Bazaar is people doing things and there's like a less structured process to it. But the bazaar ultimately wins because the bazaar is based on individual doing things for their own subjective value based reasons. The Roman Empire is like historically quoted as an example of that. That Roman Empire was believed to be too big to fail, which is like the argument people make for big banks or even big tech, that they are too big to even imagine a life without. But that's not true, and history has had these things before. As the silver content dwindled, so did the coin's value. Hyperinflation eventually ensued, severely destabilizing the Roman economy. The diminished value of the denarius affected the morale and loyalty of the Roman legions. Their wages paid in the weakened denarius could no longer buy what they once did. The decline was not limited to the military. Public trust in the Roman economy eroded alongside the denarius value. Contributing to economic disparity, the wealthy invested in land and other assets, but ordinary citizens saw their savings diminish faster and faster over time. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Yeah, I think this is again, I love this chapter, especially for some of the passages which are very well written. I think it's important that more people understand these ideas, however you articulate them. I'll read this again quickly. As the silver content dwindled, so did the coin's value. Hyperinflation eventually ensued, severely destabilizing the Roman economy. Yeah, one point that, of course, I was not there in the Roman Empire and that time of history, but for people to understand inflation, to understand monetary policy, to understand how money is being debased was terribly difficult because there was no internet, there was no public information, at least to the degree that we have. So hyperinflation re- would have been the necessity for people to question money, to question that there is inflation, because that's like the average person will be forced to learn it very harshly. So that's been the history's lesson that before internet, it was terribly difficult for people to even understand what's going on in the economy. The diminished value of the denarius affected the morale and loyalty of the Roman legions. Yeah, the Roman legions here refer to the Roman military. So their wages is like the first person that will have a problem with less wages or with weakened currency is the person with the weapons, because they are the ones who are protecting um, the the system itself, the system who has the power to print money. Could no longer buy what they once did. The decline was not limited to the military. Public trust in the Roman economy eroded alongside the denarius value, contributing to economic disparity. The wealthy invested in land and other assets, but ordinary citizens saw their savings diminish faster and faster over time. Sound familiar, doesn't it? Yeah, this last statement is a very modern day reality as well, that wealthy do always have the option to invest in land and other global market capital assets, but it's the ordinary citizens who suffer more, or I mean, they suffer not just more in terms of the reality of suffering, but they are the ones who will learn the lesson of inflation first, because they see their savings evaporate much faster compared to somebody who has a lot of land and just sees number go up there. Today, much of the economic hardship and erosion of purchasing power from inflation is exported from Western nations to developing countries with legal currencies. As their currencies continuously devalue against stronger Western ones like the US dollar, these these countries are forced into a cycle of dependency where they must import essential goods at ever increasing costs, while their exports remain undervalued and cheap on global markets. Yeah, this is again a very modern day important lesson, that inflation is like they pay a subsidy on inflation because the Western countries get to export that, get to send away that theft or send away that problem somewhere else, because there are even weaker currencies than the US dollar. So yeah, so these countries are forced into this cycle of dependency because they are forced to provide service to the stronger currency. So they import essential goods at ever increasing costs, while their exports remain undervalued and cheap on global markets. I'll take quick pause here. We'll read until 9 or 9:05. I'll not take any longer time than that. Yeah, quick pause in case Pragya or yeah, BTC Mubhai, I just saw that you joined. I think joined a bit late. Thanks for joining. But yeah, in case somebody has questions, feel free to ask them, share any comment.
When moon?
When Moon, I think we've seen enough of Moon. What are your expectations as we speak? I'll just quickly, I'll just quickly check. Yeah, it's 91, almost 92. Yeah, I don't like it. Yeah, but yeah,
You don't like Amazon?
because yeah, not enough Bitcoin being stacked that I would want
Late
the
to,
price to go up too soon.
late to the party.
Yes.
And me too.
Okay.
There's just someone just said when moon, right? So if you
Yeah.
go online, please search when moon calculator, where you can input the annual inflation rate of the money supply, the normal inflation rate, and your it's basically kind of a Bitcoin retirement calculator which you can use. So just search when moon calculator Bitcoin and you'll find it.
Is that the one that Chaitanya has built?
No, no,
The
no.
map?
That's that Excel workbook is different, not the one which Chaitanya has built. That is an Excel workbook. This is an online calculator.
This
Okay.
must have been built by Mango.
Has anyone heard about that Simply Bitcoin, right? So I saw this on their one of their uh, Twitter videos, when moon calculator. I'll share the link in the group for everyone later.
Right. Yeah, I think Jimmy song, I like that. Yeah, maybe I'm just biased because I don't want the number to go up too soon. That I don't know. It's a very psychological thing, but it was relevant. I'll just quickly share it with the group as well. It's relevant to everybody, but I think I resonated with it, and there is a lesson there for people who are new to Bitcoin, because it's a psychological thing that I think everybody relates to. Or if someone does not let me know, I mean, that's something that I resonated with.
Come again, Shan. What did you say?
Yeah, I'm just sharing my screen. Just give me 1 second. Jimmy Song recently made an argument which I really liked. Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I have no idea. I am very bad at. I think there's some article that I started reading about the global liquidity cycle, which is what has caused the Bitcoin cycle as well. But currently, I don't understand it enough to uh, have a framework that how does the cycles happen. Yeah, I'll read this. Jimmy Song made this nice claim, a nice piece, nice simple piece. Here's the psychological barrier for most people in getting into Bitcoin. It's not the tech. They have seen it for 4 years or more. It's not the monetary aspect. They've experienced inflation firsthand. No, the biggest barrier is that they saw the price years ago and regret not buying then. For example, it's hard to buy now at 87K when you first saw it at 23K or 7K or even 1K. But here's the thing, good stores of value don't turn back. Are you not buying Apple stock because you could have bought it for much less in 2012? Are you not buying a house because you could have bought it for much less in 2006? Bitcoin is like that. Acknowledge that it's a store of value and don't be looking back. And like other stores of value, you need to have a long time horizon, not 3 weeks or even 6 months, but 5 to 10 years minimum.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of this, Ryan. So here, uh, in this tweet, right? I mean, his mindset is still he's measuring Bitcoin just the way he's measuring Apple stock or
Yeah,
whatever. What did he say?
land or
Apple,
house.
Apple stock and house. He's measuring it in terms of fiat. But with Bitcoin in picture, the measuring stick is Bitcoin itself, right?
Right.
So how I see this Mango is that I believe, okay, this is my assumption that he's not addressing people like you who try and live on a Bitcoin standard and who understand Bitcoin well, because somebody who has in depth understanding of Bitcoin like you will never regret it. I think he's addressing people who are new to Bitcoin and who have come with that baggage and they feel like they're too late to Bitcoin. I think he's addressing those people in their terminology, in a language that they understand better.
Yeah, fair.